Alright, my name is Jasmine Betts, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about poetry. First, we're going to start with some William Shakespeare poetry. A little bit about Shakespeare. His life wasn't really documented that well. He lived in Stratford upon Avon in England. He married a lady named Anne Hathaway, and that is not the actress. I don't think she can time travel. That'd be cool. Shakespeare was really first mentioned in the press in 1592, making him roughly 28 years around that time. By the time he was 33, he had published half of his plays. He wrote with elaborate metaphors and rhetoric. He began writing with histories, and then later on he started writing more tragedies, which he was really popular for. He disappeared from the theater scene after his children were born for about 7 years, and these were called the lost years by some critics. Most plays were shows in the Globe Theatre that he built. Alright, so the first sonnet is Sonnet 18. The rhyme scheme is kind of A, B, and then B, C, this, like so every other line rhymes. And that changes around line 12 and 13 are both. That's a couplet right there. Alright, and then so the tone of the poem is kind of just loving. I mean, he's talking about somebody that he's clearly either in love with or just has a lot of affection for them. There's a metaphor in line 5. He's comparing the sun to an eye of heaven. And then in line 9, he's comparing the woman's beauty to, or the person's beauty to summer and saying that it'll never fade. The purpose of this poem is really to express his love for the girl. It is metaphysical poetry because it's just really just a giant metaphor for his love. I think this really relates to today's time because like love is never a lost theme in any kind of art. And Shakespeare was a big influencer in creating pieces of art like poetry and stuff that hid the identity of the person in context and but still gave a clear message of his feelings, which is something we see often in music today about how people like Taylor Swift is a great example. She sings about love interests and other things, but like the songs about people, she doesn't mention their names, but like she alludes to them. I'm sure the person that Shakespeare wrote this about knew it was them. The next poem is Sonnet 130. It's a Italian sonnet, which are sonnets about women who seem too good to be true. This one's really about a woman who's like too normal, really, and too average. The rhyme scheme is same as most of Shakespeare's. It's every other, and then it has a couplet at the end. And a couplet just means that the last, like those two lines rhyme. The tone is really kind of like, it's hard to explain, I guess. And he loves this woman, but she's nothing special looking, at least. But he says like, I think my love as rare, and she belied false compare. It's again some metaphysical poetry, just like all of Shakespeare's. It is just a giant metaphor for someone. I guess it kind of makes imagery because as you're reading, you probably start to imagine a woman who's kind of just really average. I mean, he says, and in some perfumes there's more delight, meaning like nobody really smells good without perfume. And then in the breath from my mistress that reeks. Basically, I mean, they didn't have hygiene products back then, so. And I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound, meaning that while he loves to talk to her, it's nothing extraordinary. And then, I mean, when I think of this, trying to pull it into modern day, I could see it as being like a music video, maybe, or just a video, like a short film type thing. You know, where you see like an uglier woman, like even like if it was as the poem was spoke, you saw a woman who looks very average, and then like from someone else's point of view, and then you pull it back around, and it's the man that loves her, and you know, like you just see the love in his eyes, like even though she's nothing special to the world, and he knows that like she's still the love of his life, and I think that's really special, and I think any woman would really want anything like this to be written about her. All right, so that's all we got for Shakespeare this time. Next, we're going to talk about Edmund Spenser. A little bit about him. He was born in 1552, so around the same time as Shakespeare. He was educated in London at the Merchant Taylors' School. He hoped his poetry would secure him a place at court, but he did not succeed quite well because he antagonized the Queen's secretary, and he died later on in life due to some distressed circumstances after he had to move due to the 9 Years' War. Alright, so he wrote Sonnet 30, which it's metaphysical poetry again, just a bunch of metaphors, all kind of just really out there. The rhyme scheme is a little different than Shakespeare's because it's this A, C, and B doesn't rhyme with anything. So it's like A, C, and then D, like these two rhyme, and then that kind of just repeats. I mean, he compares here his love, the love of his life is ice, and he is fire. There's a paradox here in these first four lines. It says, my love is like to ice, as I to fire. How comes it then that this her cold so great is not dissolved through my so hot desire, but harder grows the more I her entreat. So it's really saying that like he's saying fire is supposed to melt ice, so how is it that my burning passion is making her cold heart resist? And how is it that I am growing more fond of her? These two are, just to explain a little bit, he's wondering why his crush hasn't died after all the rejection. Like he still is intensely into her. There's a hyperbole here in lines 7 and 8. He's boiling in sweat, and that is exaggeration of how he's falling in love with her more and more. And the augmented manifold, that really just means that it's increased many times over. So like his flames are his passion for the woman, and there's multiple times over. Lines 9 through 12 are a paradox again. He thinks it's miraculous that her cold rejection isn't doing anything but intensifying his feelings, but his intense desire is pushing her more away from him. And then here the author realizes love is not a toy, and mankind can be destroyed and influenced. It's stronger than nature. I mean, this poem's really relatable to today. It's a sad love song about how a man loves a woman, but she doesn't love him back.
Bacon and pepperoni pizza, homemade.